Axios is reporting that Donald Trump would like to stop hurricanes before they reach the US by nuking them.
Literally.
And he's apparently made this comment a few times, and there's actual record of him saying it. So let me give you the details. Again, this is Jonathan Swan at Axios reporting. Trump has suggested multiple times to senior Homeland Security and national security officials that they explore using nuclear bombs to stop hurricanes from hitting the United States. Now, a National Security Council memorandum recorded those comments. So that's what I was mentioning earlier when I say that there was a record to it. Now Trump claims, no, I never said that, this is the fake news media. But here is an anonymous source with the White House who spoke to Axios and paraphrased what Trump said. I got it, why don't we nuke them? They start forming off the coast of Africa. As they're moving across the Atlantic, we drop a bomb inside the eye of the hurricane and it disrupts it. Why can't we do that?
Okay. Wow. All right, so first of all, he's mentioned this idea a couple of times to his national security officials and Department of Homeland Security. He wanted to attack the hurricane over there before it got over here, to use the old Cheney-Bush ideology of we had to hit the Iraqis over there because they didn't hit us here. They didn't do 9/11, largely it was Saudis. Anyway, so sometimes he talked about it just hitting him with a normal bomb, and then apparently, at least on one occasion, he talked about nuking it because that might do the job. Of course, scientists say, no, that would not do the job. They would do the opposite job because it's a hurricane. It would take the radioactive material and spread it all throughout the world. And the wind would go into the land masses and they would all be radioactive. It is perhaps one of the worst ideas in recorded history.
It's so weird that Trump wouldn't know that. I mean,
yeah,
he seems so educated on things like that, like science and how storms work and all that. But I do want to, like, where did Trump get this idea from? So let's talk about that a little bit, okay? So I'm gonna skip ahead, let's go to graphic 14. A little bit of history. In January of 2015, 2 years before he was sworn in as president, Donald Trump was set to step into the same role in a very different capacity. He had signed on to play the president in 2015's Sharknado 3, oh hell no.
So you know what happened? This is hilarious. So Trump almost got that contract, but then he thinks about running for president. So he says, I'll get back to you. So they don't have time, they gotta go make Sharknado 3, America's waiting. So they hire Mark Cuban to play the president.
Oof.
And then Trump gets mad and says, I was gonna take that role. In fact, I'm gonna sue you guys. I'm gonna stop this whole production because you gave the role to someone else.
Oh, he don't like that.
While he's running for president. There's no end to his lunacy. There's no end to it. It's a bottomless pit. It's a Sharknado of lunacy. Okay, so let's break this down even further. I love these quotes. I'm gonna go to graphics 6, 7, and 9 here, because this describes the scene when he suggested nuking the hurricane. So according to Axios, asked how the briefer reacted, the source recalled, he said something to the effect of, sir, we'll look into that. So now that's relevant, I'm gonna come back to it in a second. Here's another anonymous source. You could hear a gnat fart in that meeting. People were astonished. After the meeting ended, we thought, what the F? What do we do with this?
Yeah, but here's what you do with it, right? What you guys have been doing, which is nothing. All they do is nod their heads and support everything he says and everything he does. If he provides a nonsensical solution to a problem, they'll just ignore it, but no one ever calls him out, right? No one ever holds him accountable. So you're gonna keep doing what you're doing now as a giant coward, and you're gonna give anonymous statements to the press, but internally you're gonna keep enabling this maniac.
Yeah, and so, but their reaction is as dangerous as Trump being that stupid.
Yes.
Because it means that no advisor of the president can tell him the truth. If you tell him the truth, his feelings are gonna get hurt. He doesn't care about the facts, he only cares about feelings. So since the president is so sensitive and so insecure and so weak, no advisor dares tell him something as obvious as, no, Mr. President, dropping a nuclear weapon into the middle of a hurricane is not going to help. Sharknado 3 wasn't true. You can't even tell the president that. Think about how dangerous that is. What if he actually wants to use a nuke and everyone in the room is frozen and you could hear a gnat fart? No, but seriously, think about it. He says, press the goddamn button. What are they gonna do? Because normally what they do is they just ignore him. They're like, oh yes, sir, we'll look into that, sir. And they're like, okay, that we all know the president is the dumbest person we've ever met in our lives. So obviously we're gonna ignore the president, which by the way is also dangerous, right? And that's a dangerous precedent to set. But then you have a president who's obviously not mentally well. So what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to say something. You're supposed to convene the cabinet and talk about the 25th Amendment and get this lunatic out of office. I know they say, oh, well, it's a bunch of sycophants, they won't do that. But guys, when the president has lost his mind and none of his advisors have the courage to tell him or anyone else in the country, other than through leaking it to the press, that is a recipe for absolute disaster. Okay, last one on the senior administration officials. Now, in hindsight, trying to cover for him, this is what they say. Well, his goal to keep a catastrophic hurricane from hitting the mainland is not bad. His objective is not bad. So it happened. It definitely happened. And now they're turning around. I mean, he had a good goal to stop the hurricane.
Cenk, I don't want to get into a debate about this, but do you see why I don't believe for a second that Trump isn't going to finish his first term?
I'm going to say the opposite.
Surrounded by people who will nod their heads and do anything and everything that Trump wants, right?
Yeah.
And they keep telling him how great he is. Trump lives in a different world than we do.
No, guys. Look, he's gone longer than I expected. I believe in facts, I love facts, and that's a fact, and there's nothing you can do to deny that, right? So I thought he'd be out by the end of his first term because this stuff he said, by the way, back in 2017. It's not like, oh, there's this theory that he's now mentally deteriorating. No, there was nothing to deteriorate. There was never any mind debate in the first place. Full-blown lunatic, total moron. He thinks wind causes cancer. He thinks all these different insane things. You know what he said over there?
He thinks exercising.
Yeah, he says he thinks exercising is bad for your health because you only have a certain amount of allotted energy in your life and it uses up. And he thinks that people who are doing exercise are idiots. So he's like, they're using their allotted energy. And especially if they're in the wind, they'll get cancer. Okay, this is the idiot that is the president of the United States. He's obviously not mentally well. But on Friday, he's talking about how Google manipulated 16 million votes in the 2016 election. 16 million? Even if you were a lunatic and thought that there was some sort of conspiracy against you, 16 million votes? I mean, there's no end to how stupid and mentally unfit he is. And he also talked about dropping off thousands of ISIS fighters in the middle of France and Germany because he was mad at them. Okay, so maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Anna will be proven right.
And I hope I'm wrong.
Okay.
Just to put that out there.
And this is a situation where this is my best guess, and I'm not like saying like there's no other way to think about this. Obviously, most people, almost everyone else, thinks that he's going to finish his term. The reason I think it's unsustainable is because he is too mentally unbalanced, and it just one after another. There's a Sharknado of lunatic comments that he's making, and I think it's going to deteriorate. And so the final nail in that coffin is, look, the markets are teetering. And now all of a sudden you got Joe Walsh jumping in, you had William Weld jumping in the primaries. People are starting to say things about how disgruntled they are. They're beginning to challenge him a little bit more. He's at 36%. Remember what I said at the very beginning of Trump's term? I said when the economy crashes and he's already passed the tax cuts for the rich, they're gonna have no reason left to support him. So if the markets crash, he's sitting at 36% and he's definitely gonna lose the next election, and that's pre the markets crashing. They're gonna turn around and go, oh my God, did you know that he's stupid? Nobody knew that. Did you know that he's not mentally balanced? Nobody knew that, it just happened. It was a deterioration that happened over the last couple of weeks, and we gotta get him out. So that's what I believe will happen. Finally, if you think that he denied it, he didn't. The tweet that he said says this: the story by Axios that President Trump wanted to blow up large hurricanes with nuclear weapons prior to reaching shore is ridiculous. I never said this, just more fake news. Trump didn't write that, okay? So he doesn't refer often to himself as President Trump. He sometimes says Trump about himself. That had no grammatical mistakes. It had something written in bold just because they want to make it seem like Trump wrote it, right? It had nothing weirdly capitalized at all, right? Other than the fake news at the end, which is a Trump trademark. Trump didn't write that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's English language right there. He didn't write that at all.
Correct punctuation.
Exactly, right? So that's an advisor saying Trump won't say that he didn't want to nuke the hurricane because he still thinks Sharknado is real. So someone go on his goddamn Twitter account and deny the story. Because if we don't deny the story, we're all going to seem like lunatics. By the way, if you work for Trump, you're not a lunatic, but you're a terrible person. And you've all agreed that this madman should be the most powerful man on earth, and you shouldn't share that with the rest of the American people and the rest of the world. We'll see you after the markets crash. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.